Hello and welcome to another episode of Rapidly Aging Technology. In today's episode, we're going to be working on polishing up an old Kirby G5 vacuum. The G5 was in production from 1997 to 1999 and was part of Kirby's G series, starting with the G3, Generation 3, which that started in 1990. And the design, more or less, has been pretty similar up until today with the current model, the Avalier. I got this fellow, and this is just the nose cap. We're going to look at the main body of the machine, from a parishioner, an older gal who, her health problems are building up, and she's in pain, so she's going to be moving to be close to her family, and so she's clearing out things. She sold this unit to me for $100, which is a pretty good price for it. It's too heavy for her. It does have a, if you don't know about the Generation series of Kirby vacuums, they actually have a transmission in them, so that when you push them, they're very light. They don't feel like you're pushing a super heavy vacuum. But doing anything else, lifting and moving them, it is a heavy metal vacuum. So this is the nose cap. And so to give you an idea of what we're working with, this side really hasn't been filled with too much as far as polishing goes. The front I've been doing a little more work on, and a little on this side. You still need to do more. As you can see, it's starting to turn out pretty good. There's still some things to clear out, though this section about here down is covered by a rubber bumper, so it doesn't need to be perfect. Let's look at the main body of the unit. So this is the, power unit. It's basically the whole vacuum except for its handle and bag. This is kind of the level of tarnish we're looking at. I do know that she stored this in her garage for a period of time. These come quite polished. If you want to see an example, this is the current Kirby Avalier. This is how they come from the factory. This is what hers looks like. Well, mine now. Quite tarnished. You can see different spots or whatnot. Maybe got some moisture on it. Looks like there's some dripping, at least condensation. And we're going to try to buff that out. So we're going to go from that to something more like that. And I'm going to be using it, doing it with, by hand, with some metal polish cream from Blue Magic, but also using a wool, a very dense wool polishing Dremel tip on, well, not your normal Dremel, on the Kirby Handi-Butler. That's right. This is why I decided to do a video on this. Kirby's always have interesting attachments. A fairly common one is their shampooer, which I do have, and it works really well. This one is currently discontinued, but was in use up until the Centuria, and I think Centuria 2, so that'd be up until, 2014. This is a turbo tool, so in there you might see more or less a turbine, kind of like what you'd find on some turbo hand tools for vacuums, which then rotates a cable basically through a flexible cable that then spins the end here. This attaches onto the pig snout attachment. So you take the main power head, the nozzle off. Well, I guess it'd just be the nozzle. It doesn't have a motor. It's powered by the belt attached to the fan on this guy. You put this snout on, which is used when you use the vacuum in blower mode. So it's just a intake guard, and then you usually attach your hose to where the bag is to then blow. And you just take your Handi-Butler, and we'll do it on the other side, and plug it in. And it's going through the power of air moving through this. It's going to spin the Handi-Butler Dremel tool up to I think 18,000 RPM is what it's rated to go up to, which is handy. And remember, when you're dealing with nice things, this is a power tool. You don't want to actually over. I'm sure that with these, they're pretty soft, but I imagine you could overdo it. I'm just gently running it over to try to get rid of the more stubborn stuff. I do have some wire buffers, more or less like steel wool, which I will resort to if I really need to. But I'm going to try to avoid it because I really don't want to do much to the aluminum more than is necessary. In a future video, I will talk more about these vacuums, but needless to say, they are exceptional cleaners and usually quite expensive when new. They're only sold properly door to door. That's the only way you get them. Now, if there's a circumstance where you can find it online where someone's selling a used one, or in the case of my Avalier, someone bought out the stock from an out-of-business dealership and has been selling them. There's another fellow doing the same thing on eBay right now, and I'll put a link in the description if you want to get the current model. Over time, there's been some, in the Generation series, the improvements have been fairly minor, but the newest ones do have more airflow by a little bit, and the design has changed. But enough of that, let's get down to actually getting these clean, starting here. And if you haven't noticed already, I'm not using my usual lavalier mic. I'm just using the built-in camera mic because I figured, I will be turning this vacuum on at some point to demonstrate the Dremel tool. I'm not going to make you watch the whole process, so hopefully this will be a short video. But yeah, I figured that with that sort of noise involved, why bother with the lavalier mic? So what you'll need is a ratty old cloth to use for the applying the polish, and also ratty brush, a ratty cloth to wipe it off once it's in the state of polish. So Blue Magic Mother's is another recommended polish, and this kind of has when you tap it, it feels like it reverberates throughout, like it's a rubbery compound. You should probably use gloves when you're doing this. Moving on, you'll want to mix it up, and I have more or less done that the other night when I started this. And yeah, it's some goopy stuff. It smells. Ugh. It smells a lot like Brasso. If you've ever used Brasso metal polish, I'm not sure if it's the same company or not. Probably not. So once it's mixed, you'll just take a little bit. You probably dab the cloth, but I'm using a spoon. That's probably too much. And we're going to take our polishing cloth, and we are just going to start rubbing it in. Now, you don't forget that you should have cleaned all your metal surfaces beforehand, which I did with soap and water and just a sponge. So this thing did look a little bit worse when I first got it. I also took off the vacuum bag and with its fill tube in there and ran it through the wash, gentle hand cycle. So that's something else you'll want to do. So now that we've rubbed this in a little bit, you notice that there's a bit of a color change in that there's some, you say, black streaking in the paste. That means it's more or less time to look about wiping it off. See, turning some silvery there. But what we're also going to do now is run this over it gently to try to buff out the worst spots. So headphone users, beware. Give me a second to change your volume, do whatever you need to do. Alright, you ready? a neat attachment. Now you could argue that, well, why don't you just have a proper Dremel tool, but you know, there you go. So if you're wondering, I was not pressing very hard, just gently trying to just buff things out. So you don't want to manhandle these things too much. I'm sure they can take it, but you don't want to have to go back and fix what you've done. So now we're going to take the clean rag and make it very unclean. Yuck. Take a clean spot of that again. Alright, we're not done, but look at the difference that made. Now you can still see there's some spots, there's some stuff to work through, and I'm going to keep working at this, but that helped. It really does speed up the process using that Dremel. And as you can see, there's no sign of any real damage being done to the metal, because it is a softer tip and we're being gentle with it. So take your time, use the tool to speed up, and you too can get this sort of thing polished. So I'm going to keep working on it. When I think I'm done with this, I'll show you. Then I'll move on to the main unit. All right, the main nozzle is more or less done. Now we're working on the main body. For my Dremel tool guy, because there's such a big flat section, and I think I'll be able to, because of this divot, use a more flat tool, we're going to switch that out. So, and I'm sure this is, I'm going to wipe this off. I'm sure this is the same as with most Dremel tools. We're going to stick this in here until we get to the point where, oh, the hole lined up perfectly. So now we use this to hold this in place while we unscrew it. We need to loosen it up here. There we go. That goes out. This guy goes in. Tighten him up there. And there we go. That size is in. So I'm going to start working on this side, and we'll come back. This top portion is worn enough that I've actually had to do a run with a little bit of a steel wool attachment, which I will show you because I'm going to do another round with it. I'm going to put a little bit more of this polish on here, and I'm sure someone watching this will know is better at polishing things than I am. You'll probably complain about my technique. Which that's fine. I'm not saying this is the best way. I'm saying this is a way that seems to work for the most part. Apply another layer onto here. My rag. You're gonna need plenty of rags when if you do this sort of thing. You have to be careful to pull that stuff out of the crevice there. I have some Q-tips to try to dig in. So now that we got a layer of this polish applied, applied to the point where it's not super goopy. Ugh. We're going to use this bit. This is the softest or finest steel wool tip that I have, and I can't remember its exact designation, but I'm sure I'll put it in the video when I'm editing. Here we go. back to scrubbing. Alright, it's actually the next week because I got distracted and then, well, didn't get back to this guy. But I've gotten the top pretty well as done as I think I can do. The side is also pretty good. I will, Windex it up a little more before I'm finished. If we look closely, you can see some very gentle pitting that has occurred. So don't store your $1,500 vacuum in your garage. So that's that side done, top done, and then this side is still to be done. So you can see kind of the difference. Of course the top was the worst, but you can see how much of a difference in polish works. Things I've learned going along is that less is more as far as the polish cream goes. If you use too much, it more or less tries to function as a lubricant for itself, so you end up just kind of wasting more. And I forgot to mention that this does have its speed control in the intake. Today I decided to hook it onto the end of the Kirby hose so I could have the machine a little farther away when I have it running. It's been quite helpful, and taking the steel wool wheel over it before I start polishing has actually sped things up quite a bit. Much more so than the the woolen polishing head, because the fine polish is really done by hand with the cream, so there's kind of it's better just do this to get the worst of it out of the way than hand polish the rest. But I think it's turning out very nicely. Alright, the G5, the main power plant, the main body of the unit is looking pretty good. It's not perfect in the areas that are a little hard to even get your finger in, tend to be not so perfect. This unit has definitely seen a lot as far as just sitting and being drift on or whatnot, but it has been cleaned up. The last thing left is there's a little bit of stuff on the handle, which oddly enough, this had its plastic protective cover film on its entire life. At the latest, this thing was built in 1999, so it's had that plastic film covering it forever. There's been a few punctures in it, but I pulled it off, and overall it's very shiny. So I'm going to clean this guy up and slap it all back together. Alright, everything is polished up, so now we're going to assemble the unit back together. First, we're going to start with the power nozzle. We're going to put the rubber bumper back on, which I'll probably clean a little later with maybe some alcohol to get the paint rub marks off. But this part is the front, so we're just going to take our head and start trying to put it back on. Let's see, we're going from the top, make more sense? That seems to be working so far. Or there are some things on the back you want to be careful of there. Now we need to get the lip over. And you'll notice that there's some cutouts here, and that's going to be important because the thing that holds the brush roll on is going to clip into those. Then we also have these on the back which hold that in, and those were almost entirely seized up, so I had to oil them. Just pushing all the bumper on. So now that the bumper's on, we're going to put the brush roll back on. Now, on these older units, there's rather than an exposed magnet, it's covered up in a plastic ring here. But you want the plastic end that's a little bit different, or the magnet, or I guess a piece of iron, whatever it is, on the side that has the LED that tells you that the brush roll is rolling. It's basically like a tiny generator. So we want to align it that way. And then on these, on each side, these tabs that hold it all in, they have a number of markings on each one. You want to match them up, and what they do is adjust it to wear level. So from the factory, they're both set to 1, which is how I got this machine. However, this brush roll is a bit worn, so I think we're going to set it to 2. So this side, okay, we got 1, 2, 3, so 2. This side, 1, 2, 3. That's 1, because that one's just kind of a just the stretchy part. So that's that side. And then we want to get the belt on it first. This is the belt that was originally on it, and this is a old but new belt, so a belt that's been unused. You can see how much it's stretched over time. It also has most of its tread here, but it does have like a big gouge in it. So we're going to toss that. You know, if I'm giving this as a wedding gift, I should make some effort on it. It's picked up some hairs since I cleaned it, but this actually is, while it's still a bit dingy, is a lot cleaner than what it was. There we go. And there we go. So now you just slip it into these sides of the machine here, these sides of the nozzle. Now this, the Kirby has been built more or less the same for the last nearly 30 years. So the brush rolls are interchangeable from all their generation units. I think, as I mentioned, that this machine, it was built between 97 and 99. Okay, so there's 1, 2 notches there, 1, 2 notches there, and as you can see, there's some protrusion there, so I think that's good. Yes. Next, we put the cover on. These bits that stick out are going to point towards the rear to be held in by the latches. And then on the front you'll see a rolled over piece. Those go into the notches on the front of the unit. And getting them lined up is sometimes a little, it feels a little tricky on occasion. Okay, those look more or less in. So now we'll just rotate these up once we get them tightened down. Alright, by pushing down and pulling, it'll lock it all in over the rubber. And then these ones will slip over, and then you will tighten them. So this guy, because my thumb's around it, will do that. This guy do that. And so once they're all tight in, you'll notice it's nice and free flowing. It does jut out of the base, which is good. Now that we have the belt inside there, we're going to use this contraption on the front called the belt lifter to grab it and pull it up. So that's in the down position. Let's see if it'll, oh, it's already grabbed it. So what it's doing, not sure if you can see that, it has a hook on there, and we're going to start pulling it up. And on a new belt, it does take some force. Alright, so now it's on the belt off selection, which means it's pulled up and above off of the spindle, which means the front looks all wonky like that. So then we just put it on the front of the machine. Lift that up. You see we got the bird's feet and the bird little branch for the bird to sit on. This turns to lock it in, and then we lower the belt onto the spindle. And now the Kirby main unit is back together. The next step is to take the handle and just pop it in. After that, you take the cable and you feed it through the cable guides. The back of these hold handles, by the way, on these older models are little piggy banks. So if you find coins while you're vacuuming, you throw them in and they can pile up, and then you unscrew it and take the back off. It's kind of a fun little idea. That one's a bit wonky. And then there we go. That's the cable back on. All right, now we need to put the bag on. So first you'll need the full bag bonnet with the mini emptor, which when I do my full Kirby video, I'll talk more about the mini emptor, where it came from, what it is like today. This one, of course, is scratched up because it's on the side of the machine. And that is, of course, connected to the bag, which is in this lovely, I don't know, mottles red color, burgundy, maroon, whatever you want to call it. It reminds me of the vacuum I grew up with, which was a Hoover Elite 2, within a kind of a reddish color. Not quite like, exactly like this, but I really liked it. Anyway, to put this on, you notice that there's a metal bump right here. You're going to line that up with this plastic bump here. And once it's all on, you'll rotate into the machine. Now that's latched into place. Then you take this plastic clip and you pop it into there. So now the bag is on. But you don't just run this thing with just its cloth bag on, which I did put through the wash and it survived. Hooray! You use a disposable inner bag. You take the zipper, you undo the zipper, and inside there should be the fill tube. This is a nice little innovation that came about because originally the earliest vacuums would actually fill from the bottom. If you look at some really old Hoovers, like the earliest, some of the earliest vacuums, they actually fill from the bottom, and then the bag starts to droop down more and more to try to let more dirt in. Well, the fill tube pops up at more or less the top of the bag and fills into it, which is a lot more efficient. The bag we're using is an old Kirby Micron Magic paper bag. Now these were a nice step up from just a basic paper bag, and I think they were ahead of the competition at the time, or most of the competition. But today's HEPA Micron Magic Allergy Plus bags are a lot better. But I'm just going to use this bag because I have it for test purposes, and it's just colored from probably some water damage. I'm not going to be running this long term in here. But this machine was built at a time when the standard paper bags and then these were in service, so its outer bag is thicker than the current model. My guess is because this, acted as a sort of secondary filter. So what you do is you take the hose, and you'll notice that there's a pattern here. This is a push on and twist. You see the nubbins? So we're going to set this on at an angle and then twist to straighten it out. The newer models use the F connector, which is different, and I'll show you if I ever replace the bag in my current model. Here we go, lining the bag up. Hopefully it's in shot. The rubber seal pushes out of the way, and then you clip it on. And now that's not going anywhere. And then you put the bag inside the outer bag. Now for you people who are only using vacuums that have they're bagless, so like your Dysons or almost any of the like grocery store or Walmart vacuums out there. If you've never used one of these, you've never dealt with changing a bag, so I figured I should show you. And here we have it. The final, polished for the most part, Kirby G5 $100 vacuum. That was once a $1,500 vacuum. These are excellent machines, and you know what? I really recommend, if you've never used a bag machine, to try to find one of these guys, or any high quality bagged machine. They really do seem to pull up, if they're a good model, they pull up a lot of dirt and they just pack it into that bag. So you can go, depending on your dirt level, you can go a month without changing the bag reasonably, and the dirt just piles down. My parents, they have it's a Eureka. I got them, a few years ago, because I was just buying them a vacuum, because theirs was running out, starting to get old. It is a bagless, and you get halfway through vacuuming and it pretty much fills up. All that hair and dust is always just really fluffed up in them. So because if you dump it out and weigh it, there's not really a whole lot there. But these bags, when you fill these bags up, they are heavy. But you only fill them up to half of their physical capacity, because the bag in a bagged machine also functions as the filter. And what's nice is, well, especially with the Kirby, it's such a simple air path that there's not really many spots for air to leak out and spray dust everywhere, unlike a more complex tubed bagless system. So usually you get all your dirt in the bag, and then it just comes down to how good is the bag at filtration. These paper Micron Magic bags are okay. I mean, they're fine, but they're nothing like the modern HEPA disposable bags. In a future video, we will do a comparison between this and the current model. So this would be about, I don't know, 18 years of difference in models. And I think before I leave you, we're going to at least turn it on so we can hear it run. Now on this carpet, this is the weird super flat carpet with the ridges. No vacuums really care for this kind of carpet. This is just dingy stuff that's thrown down, these rugs. But I'll see if I can find an opportunity to show a little demonstration here. At least we'll turn it on. Alright, we're going to just quickly power on the machine and make sure that motor's running, that the brush roll is in fact spinning, and then we'll also kick on Tech Drive. It has a transmission system to make sure that that is in fact still running too. It was before I cleaned it. There should be no reason why it wouldn't continue to work, but we'll let you hear what the machine sounds like. So it's plugged in. There's the big gray on-off button, and we want to put it in neutral first, using my worn-out slippers. Sorry about that. So that was the machine running. It sounds to be running pretty well. There's a bit of a high-pitched noise that, I mean, it sounds a little different than mine, but doesn't sound unhealthy, and it definitely is doing a little more since it has that new belt. So I think that might be the most gist of it. Yeah, bag inflated, seems to be running all right. So I will keep doing tests for this, and then I will do a video comparing this and the Avalier and talking a little more in depth on high-end vacuums. So if you enjoyed this, cleaning up one vacuum and polishing it with another, and I will talk to you later. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Join the Retro Machines group on Facebook, which is more computer-oriented, admittedly. And look into the channels of VacLab and Performance Reviews and Ibiaziak. Look in the description. There's some vacuum-oriented channels in case you're interested in vacuums and whatnot. Anyway, have a great day. Bye.